our genomes have degenerated to such a degree that we are all mutants at this point. We're X-Men, but not in the good way, not like the comic book characters. We're really crappy versions of X-Men. We're X-Men in the opposite way. We're all broken down and pathetic copies of Adam, basically. Biologically speaking, cognitively speaking, and this is, of course, the inversion of what we're taught. We're taught that our ancient ancestors, our primordial ancestors, were apish, that they were cavemen, stupid cavemen, and that we have been gradually becoming a much more intelligent species. That is not true. We are accumulating over time deleterious mutations, and deleterious means bad, negative, destructive mutations. And it's a snowball effect. Further we get away from Adam, the more we are mutated. We're still humans, obviously. We're just really, really, really crappy humans. So our cerebral capacity, our physical fitness has been declining for thousands of years. And it's reaching a critical mass moment in which...
My name is Timothy Albrino, and you are watching End Times Productions.
One of the things that we need to comprehend when thinking about the purpose of mankind and the condition of mankind is the fact that we have degenerated from the original prototype, the original human prototype, and that was Adam. Adam is our progenitor, and Adam was created perfectly. And when I say perfectly, I mean that his genetic architecture was impeccable. There was not a single error in his genetic code. He was exactly and precisely crafted to be human. And that means that he was human without defect. And that, to me, is a very profound statement. What does it mean to be human without any defects whatsoever? Because all of us are mutants. We are all degenerate human beings. And I mean degenerate in the genetic sense. We have degenerated from Adam. Essentially, we have been and are devolving from the original prototype of our species. So the further we go back in time, the more genetically pure the human stock is. So that means that the generations that were close to Adam in the pre-flood world were more human than we are today. And were less degenerated, were less devolved than we are. They were much more magnificent. Biologically speaking, cognitively speaking, they were more intelligent than we are. And this is, of course, the inversion of what we're taught. We're taught that our ancient ancestors, our primordial ancestors, were apish, that they were cavemen, stupid cavemen, and that we have been gradually becoming a much more intelligent species. That is not true. We have gradually becoming a less intelligent species, a less physically robust species. Indeed, our lifespans, if it were not for technology, our lifespans would be plummeting, not rising, but falling because of genetic degeneration. Indeed, the human species will soon become reproductively inviable. And we know this now because of two reasons. Number one, because sperm counts are falling precipitously and have been falling for the last 50 years in the West and all over the world. And there's new studies that have come out in the last couple of years in which population geneticists have been raising the alarm saying the human species is not going to be able to reproduce because the sperm counts are going to zero by 2045. So that's one problem. The second problem is that our genomes have degenerated to such a degree that we are all mutants at this point. We're X-Men, but not in the good way, not like the comic book characters. We're really crappy versions of X-Men. We're X-Men in the opposite way. We're all broken down and pathetic copies of Adam, basically. There's something called mutational load in population genetics. And a mutational load references the amount of genetic mutations that are passing down through one generation to another. So in other words, we have a lot more hereditary genetic defects than did our ancestors generations into the past. That's called a mutational load. We are accumulating over time deleterious mutations, and deleterious means bad, negative, destructive mutations. And it's a snowball effect. Further we get away from Adam, the more we are mutated. We're still humans, obviously. We're just really, really, really crappy humans. So our cerebral capacity, our physical fitness has been declining for thousands of years. And it's reaching a critical mass moment in which our genome is so corrupted. We are so genetically degenerate. We have so much mutational load at this point, the human species at large, that it's becoming that we're seeing an explosion of genetic diseases. So this accumulation of deleterious mutations in our genome is leading to an explosion of genetic diseases, most notably cancer. Cancer is fundamentally the result of a mutation in a gene. When our genes mutate, certain genes mutate, we get certain kinds of cancer. And that's why certain kinds of cancer are hereditary. They're being passed on through the genome. And so the genome is the codex of our biological construct. And to the degree that it becomes corrupted and information is lost or changed, and that would be corruption, to that degree, we become a more diseased race and a less viable and a less fit race, and viable in the sense of reproductive viability. So we can still reproduce, but we're seeing a whole lot of miscarriages. And we're seeing all kinds of new problems arising with reproduction that is sort of just being swept under the rug. But the fundamental problem is that we are devolving. We're running out of genetic rope. So couple that with the fact that our sperm counts are going to zero by 2025, which is a function of the same problem. The reason why the sperm counts are going to zero is because we are degenerating. As I said, we are approaching a critical mass scenario. And there are, of course, a host of accelerating factors that are contributing to our decline, the decline of our species, the decline in fitness of our species, the chemicals, the wave bands, all of these things that we're constantly exposed to all the time. Those are exacerbating the situation, but they're not the fundamental root of the problem. The root of the problem is genetic degeneration. In other words, we are devolving. That's the root of our problem. We are devolving and have been devolving from Adam. Contrary to the Darwinian perspective, we are not experiencing a genetic ascent into a fitter form of Homo sapien. Rather, we are experiencing a drastic genetic decline that is now accelerating because of all the mutagens that we're being exposed to in our environment, all the artificial stuff. And so that's a very long-winded explanation of the crises of degeneration, genetic degeneration that our species is currently facing. Pretty soon, to sum it up, we are not going to be able to make new human beings. We're not going to be able to make babies because we are becoming reproductively viable. So how are we going to propagate offspring in the future? We're going to do it synthetically. The babies of the future will not be born from human wombs. They will be born in test tubes, like the Matrix. Yes. So that's it'll be in vitro, and then there'll be some kind of an artificial womb, and this was going to be a great liberation for feminists and liberal women who would love to have children but don't want to carry them in their bodies, right? It's a technological liberation from the curse of Eve, and it is, of course, an aberration of the purpose of mankind and a corruption of the natural propagation of our species. And so what I'm saying essentially is that in a generation or two, we're finished in terms of our reproductive viability. We're finished. So the trajectory of genetic degeneration, which is a downward trajectory, is coalescing with the upward trajectory of transhumanism. We are going to have to incorporate technology into our biology in order to move into the future as a species. And population geneticists understand this, so do futurists and technologists and technocrats. They understand this. And it's no coincidence that the decline of the human species is happening at the end of the age. We're in the beginning of the end of the age, and I don't mean some abstract concept of an age. I mean the age of Pisces that began, corresponded, and was in some sense inaugurated with the birth of Christ. And an age is 2,160 years. So we are at the beginning of the end of the age. It is not a coincidence that the human species is becoming increasingly inviolable, and we're heading for a critical mass point in the future. And suddenly, at this moment in time, we now have the technology, we have the rudiments of the technologies to transform our species, to consciously evolve our species out of Adam and into a post-human condition. And this transition, which is slowly beginning to manifest, is called transhumanism. And the word transhumanism is indicative of a transformation. You're going from one state to another. On this side of transhumanism are homegrown human beings, still the offspring of Adam. On the other side of transhumanism are post-humans who are no longer human beings and are therefore no longer the offspring of Adam. And this is where the concept of the birthright comes into play, which is the premise of my book. This is something I began to contemplate regarding transhumanism, and really was what I set out to write about in the book, and which I did write about in the book. And that is, what are the consequences? What are the ramifications of the offspring of Adam, of mankind, human species, losing or forfeiting its humanity? What are the theological consequences? Well, the first thing that occurred to me is that there are very serious salvific ramifications. See, the Son of God, according to the scriptures, became a man to redeem, reconcile, and restore mankind to the family of God. But he had to become a man in order to do it. In order to save the offspring of Adam, he had to become one of us. He had to be a kinsman redeemer. And that's why the Old Testament, and the book of Ruth and so forth, lays out this idea of a kinsman redeemer. He had to become one of us to redeem us. And salvation in our kinsman redeemer, salvation in the Son of God, in Christ, there is one stipulation. You must be human. You must be human to qualify for salvation in the cross of Christ. Anybody, doesn't matter what their background is, doesn't matter if they were a murderer, a psychopath, a pornographer, it doesn't matter. Anybody can come to Christ, can repent and receive forgiveness through the cross of Christ, the gift of God, and be reconciled to the Father. Anybody, as long as that person is a son or daughter of Adam. If they are not, then they are disqualified from salvation through the cross of Christ. They cannot be reconciled to the family of God because Jesus is our kinsman redeemer. That is to say, a post-human, a person who has transitioned from human into something other than human, cannot be saved in the theological sense. The birthright of mankind, this concept of what it means to be a human being and our relationship to our original progenitor, is at the heart of the gospel. What is the purpose of mankind? What's the function of mankind? Why was Adam created? There are two fundamental reasons. The first reason is we were created for fellowship in the family of God. And that blows my mind. And that's a fact. That is a biblical fact. Adam was created as a son of God. We know that because of the genealogy of Jesus of Nazareth, which is explicit regarding this point. Because if you trace the genealogy of Jesus of Nazareth back through, Jesus, the son of Joseph, the son of so-and-so and so-and-so, the son of David, the son of so-and-so, going all the way back into the pre-flood world, the son of Seth, the son of Adam, the son of God. So Adam was a son of God. But we know that Adam was not the first son of God. We know that because we read in Job that the sons of God shouted for joy when the earth was created, when the foundations of the earth were laid. That's before Adam. That's a pre-Adamic context. So you had other sons of God who pre-existed Adam, who was also son of God. In other words, Adam had older brothers. He had elder siblings. And they were not human, because the human race had not yet been created. Adam was created to be a part of the family. He was created for fellowship with the Father and with the divine family. That is the highest purpose that any sentient creature could ever have. It is the pinnacle of purpose to fellowship with the Father in the family of God and with our elder siblings. That's the first reason why Adam was created. The second reason why he was created was to govern the earth. So the first reason is fellowship. The second reason was to govern the earth. And this is what the sons of God do, by the way. It's a royal family. So Adam's job description was to be the regent of this realm. And a regent is a dignitary or an agent who is appointed by a king to go and rule in a distant realm on his behalf. So a regent is a legal representative of the king, and they carry the king's authority. And that was the job description of mankind on planet Earth, of Adam and his offspring. They were to be regents on planet Earth. This is our realm. We are the regents of the earth. We are to govern it according to the precepts of the kingdom of heaven and the will of its king. That was the function. So what is the birthright of mankind? What is the birthright of Adam? Dominion of the earth. But what happens when we lose our humanity? When we lose our humanity, we forfeit, we willingly relinquish the birthright of Adam, the dominion, the authority that is associated with it. And we are no longer in a post-human state. We are no longer the offspring of Adam, and therefore we are no longer imbued with his authority, with the deed of the earth and the dominion of this planet. And that is a situation that is exceedingly dangerous, and it happened once before, and that was in Genesis 6. We're all familiar with the Genesis 6 affair, that the Watchers descended to the earth on the summit of Mount Hermon. There were 200 Watchers, and they bound themselves together by mutual imprecations, with an oath of mutual imprecations. And they had this strategy, they had this plan. They descended into the plains and they began to select from among the daughters of men. I think specifically from the daughters of Cain. They began to select wives. And then they would copulate with these women and procreate through them their own human hybrid sons who were human enough to claim the birthright of Adam and take dominion of the earth, usurp it from the sons of Adam. Because the Watchers were not legally authorized to have dominion of the earth themselves. Why? Because they're not human. They're not the offspring of Adam. But if they could produce human hybrid sons, then their sons could usurp that dominion, and the Watchers, the fathers, could rule the earth by proxy from behind the thrones of their hybrid sons, which is precisely what they did. And so this wasn't just about lust. This wasn't just about, angels wanting to come have a good time on earth with women. This was a cunning strategy to usurp the birthright of mankind through their hybrid progeny, through the progeny of the Watchers, the hybrid sons.
The conversation you heard today, the content of this conversation, is detailed in my book, Birthright: The Coming Post-Human Apocalypse and the Usurpation of Adam's Dominion on Planet Earth, which you can get on Amazon.com. You can also get it on Walmart.com and other places. And you can follow me on YouTube. My channel is just my name, Timothy Alberino. I have a Birthright lecture series. It's a lecture series based on the content of the book that is ongoing, that is a really good companion to the book. And obviously the lecture series is free, so you can follow me on YouTube. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter. My handle is always the same, Timothy Alberino.